I found a lot of interest in this topic. I guess it's not that appealing to me, but it tends to be appealing to the end buyers because this is something that is just second nature to what I do every day and what Jay certainly does every day as well, which is, comping properties. And everybody wants to know the mythical way or that, how do you comp a property? How do you get that value? So I thought it might be a good idea today to go down some bullet points and some very high-level stuff that you can look at that can either eliminate a deal or potentially put you in touch with, hey, this might be a deal. Some of the things that I look at on a day-to-day basis when I'm inside of the city, I recommend looking, 1/10 of a mile out and really stick to the block that you're actually looking on, because I don't know how many people watching this are actually doing deals in a city, but there's enough sample size and enough of a congested area where if you have to stretch to find your numbers there, or you have to go to 2/10 or 3/10 of a mile, you're probably not looking at a deal. In the suburbs, and I'll probably let Jay hit on the suburbs a bit more because they do a lot in the suburbs. A quarter mile is how our local MLS uses it. I tend to start with about 6 months back in time frame. I want to see, that's my most accurate to-date market sample as to what the end product can give me. And then I compare a lot of times the insides of the properties and the quality of renovation, which we'll discuss in another video, because you need to know, is this a slightly lived-in house that's selling for this number, or is this a fully renovated house selling for this number? It doesn't sound like there's a big difference, but there's a huge difference between a fresh, fully new windows, fully new hardwood floors, the right finishes and so forth, versus somebody who might even just live there for 5 years. There's a very large difference between the sales price many a times, even that in new construction. You probably find that a lot. New construction to something that is just renovated. So those are some of the things that I look at and things you need to compare when you're trying to analyze a deal and decide if it is one. Use geography first. That's huge. The geographical distance from your target property, and then immediately followed by that is time frame, because are you comparing the current market we're in? You don't care what the market said in 1999. So why do you care what it said 4 or 5 years ago? You care what it says in the last 6 months, a year.
Or less if possible.
Or less, yeah. I would say sometimes, I don't know about you, but I go back maybe 2 years to get a feel for the market, just to see the trending direction of it. Yeah. But if I'm putting a hard number on it, 6 months, to a year most would be where I go. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree, and I'll chime in related to what I look at, because a lot of our stuff is suburbs. More importantly, one of the things you touched on, which I 100% agree with, is the way I look at it is, as soon as somebody moves into a house, it's like buying a car. It depreciates in value immediately, because all of a sudden you don't have brand new carpet, you don't have brand new this. Was it fully renovated? Yes, but it was lived in. You got some dinked walls, you got little imperfections here and there. That isn't going to be a huge difference, but it could be 10% difference. And also, when you go to sell a house with somebody living in it, it's hard. The showing instructions are hard. There's challenges related to that. So there's just a little bit of wear and tear. Big things with suburbs. It is so much easier to comp a property that sits in a subdivision where you can type in like only manor, for instance, and there's 3 to 5 styles of a house, and there's 300 houses. That's usually, and they're all in the same zip code, and they're all in the same school district, which are other big things to look at. Those are the most important things that I like, and those are the easy ones to do. Like a townhouse community, for instance, is so easy to do, right? Don't go across a highway to another townhouse if you have a sample size here. Don't be emotional and be like, oh, well, this one over here sold for more. Yes, it had a garage. I'll downgrade that 25 grand. Whatever the case is, stick to the facts, and just make sure there is enough comps and sample sizes. You want at least 3 actives and at least 3 solds. And if you can't, find that in your sample size, it gets a little tricky to try to, okay, well, let's upgrade this value. Let's lower this value from further away. But I always do subdivision, and then I'll do a polygon search or a radius search based on, ideally the closest area, and then I expand. But I do want enough comps, and some missing things that a lot of people just don't realize that you really need to look for. And we notice this because we do the loans on the front end, and we see what they think that's worth, and then we look on the back end what they actually end up selling for. And a few big key things are: does it sit on a double yellow line? Is it sitting, let's say there's 300 houses in a neighborhood and your house is one, just outside the neighborhood right there, but it's on a double yellow line. All of a sudden that property's not worth exactly what this next door neighbor house is that sits in a neighborhood, right? It's not governed by the same homeowners association. It sits on a busy street, whatever the case is. So that, if there's power lines or other stuff in your backyard, if there's a highway in your backyard,
graveyard,
all of that stuff needs to be taken in consideration. And the most important thing that I think that a lot of people take for granted is who your next door neighbor is and the condition of their house, and do they have barking dogs, and how is that gonna relate to you? And obviously it's a little bit higher, of a concern when it's a townhouse or a semi-detached house in a city. But even in suburbs, if you got a crappy property with a boat sitting out front, and you're about to fully renovate a house, and it's gonna be really, really nice with your white picket fence and everything, and you got some boat and some car that's halfway worked on in the driveway next to you.
Up on blocks,
It's got to be taken in consideration, right? So just keep in mind when you use the word comp, it's a comparable. Pulling comps is an opinion of value. We all have our own opinions related to what we feel like it's worth. There's not one right or wrong answer. I certainly would not ask appraiser or a realtor to be the final call. That's your job. Yeah. As a real estate investor, that is your job. You use all the resources that you have, you compile data, and you come up with your own opinion based on your data to make the decision. But it's probably the most important thing in real estate, and that's what you should be doing as the expert, determining what you're going to sell the property for.
I agree with that.